And welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today we've got another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video for you. Specifically, we're going to continue in our Masterful modding series, and we're going to look at some characters that really crave offense. Some of these are going to be must have offense, and nothing else really matters in the world. And then some of them are going to be more of a, they really want your offense, but they also want a lot of other stuff too. I mean, let's be honest, some of them are just really greedy guys. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, so first and foremost, we're going to start here. We've got a top 10 characters that need offense, and then we've got bonus 3 that's all they want. They just want all of the offense. Our top 10 that we have here are characters that really need lots of stuff, but offense is something that you really need to make sure that you're putting on them, in addition to some other key stats as well, which we'll talk about in a second. This is not in a top 10 order. Let me just point that out, folks. It is just the top 10 characters at the moment that need this. Now, with that being said, this is not a Galactic Legend list. We are not doing GLs here. GLs are a completely different animal, everybody. This is all non-GL characters. Also, just want to point out, this does not take Aphra into account at this point. Aphra is so new, I didn't really want to put her on this list just yet. Plus, I don't anticipate we're going to be modding her for offense anyway, but I just wanted to put that little clarification out there that Aphra is not included currently under the options, is what we'll say for this video. So, with that being said, first character we have here is General Skywalker. General Skywalker, Skywalker, blah, blah. First and foremost, really needs protection. Protection is a key thing for him. You want to mod him with tons of it, but you also want to give him a ton of offense. We talked about how he really needs modded for protection in our series earlier with the video on protection, but if you're going to move on to a second degree level of stat that he needs, offense is the big one. You can see here with the way I have him modded currently, he does have 4 offensive mods, in addition to some defensive mods. I prefer defense over health here in this instance. But you can see that most of my primaries on him are going to be protection. So he is very important to give protection. Without a doubt, that is probably the most important thing that we're going to be giving to him. But you're also going to notice that in some cases, unfortunately, I've had not such great rolls, but I almost always have offense as a secondary, and I try to make sure it's at least a high secondary when possible. So you can see offense is all through him. So is offense his #1 stat? Not necessarily, but he absolutely needs that offense, folks. We are at a point in the game where you can't just pick one stat anymore when you're modding and just mod for that one stat. You really have to take all of the stats into account when you're picking these mods. And this is why I think this video is going to be so important. There's a ton of characters that need offense, folks. But there's a lot more characters that we need to prioritize that have many layers to them, including, in this case, General Skywalker, who the primary need is protection, but he really needs that offense as well. So make sure you're modding him for offense, folks. It's very important. All right, with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to our second character that we have here, and that is Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker. Now, there's some not consensus opinions on this, folks. Some people will mod him for speed. In my opinion, I don't think that's the best idea. They'll mod him for speed just to try to get him out ahead of the other team. I think especially when we're talking about Galactic Legends and having him be with Galactic Legend teams and Jedi Knight Revan teams at times, the speed is not going to be important. He really is not used as a lead that frequently, and because of that, the speed is not that essential. Instead, what you need him to do is just hit ridiculously hard, especially if you're using him against GLs. Now, he is kind of the opposite of General Anakin Skywalker. Skywalker requires protection first and foremost, but also needs lots and lots of offense. Skywalker here, Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker, I should say, really craves the offense, but also wants protection in addition to that. He does need to have some speed, folks, in my opinion. I would give him some speed. You can see that my arrow here is a speed arrow, but you can see I've got as much offense on him as I can, basically, at this point, and I threw in some protection. I don't have a super great mod on this particular spot, unfortunately. You can see that I do have 4 offense mods plus the health. When we get down to here, we can see we've got lots of protection, lots of offense. I do have the triangle loaded up for crit damage. He does tend to do crits quite frequently. You could argue that crit damage and crit chance would be a good mod set for him. I think offense is better, personally, just because of when you start to get the really high relic levels, you're going to really see the benefit there. Again, you can see this one I have an offense primary. And this one you can see, again, I have a high offense secondary. So again, you can kind of see the theme, folks. The offense for him, in my opinion, is the most important, but you need to have kind of a balanced stance on him. He needs to have a good bit of speed. He also needs to have a good bit of protection if possible. You can see this is unfortunately not a great example on this one. I've got a lot of health on him there. But the offense, in my opinion, is probably the #1 most important stat for Jedi Knight Luke in particular. All right, third character, I should say, that we have here, continuing along with the Skywalker tradition, we have Commander Luke Skywalker. Now, in the past, before Chupio came out, usually you would mod him for either speed and potency or critical damage crit chance. With the release of Chupio, that has changed things a lot. Now, because of Chupio, CLS will share the majority of his stats with other characters. Because of that, instead of you modding for crit damage, which does not share, you want to mod for offense, which does share. He obviously has a ton of stats. He is probably one of the characters that I think just craves any and all stats possible. I do see, you can see, this is an unusual one. I do have an offense arrow on him. Now, this is largely because it has a really high speed secondary, and I felt like for his team in particular, because I use them for certain counters, that offense was actually more important for CLS in this instance than what the speed might necessarily be. You can see all 3 of these on the right are all offense primary, so I've really got him loaded up pretty heavily. You can see again a primary or secondary on offense there, a very high secondary offense there, and then obviously we have a primary here as well. So again, super important to get him loads of offense. Your whole team gets that offense as a result. And man, that CLS team just really can wreck people if you've got him modded relatively well. Fennec Shand. Unfortunately, Fennec is one of the characters on this list that I don't really have at this point. She absolutely loves offense, folks. You want to give her at least, the 4 primary offense mods in particular. And then I would say probably go with the health is the other option to go along with her. But you really want to get her loads and loads and loads of offense. For those of you that aren't familiar with her kit, basically what happens here is that she will do multiple attacks per turn, essentially, per attack that she has here. She's very similar to Thrawn in that regard. Thrawn would have multiple instances of attack whenever he would fracture somebody. Fennec works very much the same way. And because she tends to not crit, she tends to do very much a lot of just base damage. She's kind of like Yoda in that regard. You really, really, really want to get her loaded up with offense, not crit damage, not crit chance, etc., etc. Give her any and all the offense you can. She does not necessarily need just offense, though. So everyone that we've talked about thus far usually requires a good bit of speed. They require either protection, health, etc., etc. She's no different in that scenario. You really want her to be relatively tanky if possible. You want her to be relatively fast as possible, because the more turns she takes, the more she hits, the more damage she's doing, etc., etc. But really, her primary function is offense and to hit as hard as possible, similar to another character we're going to be talking about at the end that does not require any speed. We'll get to that in the bonus content. Last on this top 5 section that we have here is Cam. You can see I have an exception here in terms of the way I have him modded, and that is because I do not have a 7-star Cam. I've been told I need to cam harder. Sorry, guys. I'm doing my best. When you do get Cam up to 7 stars and you can relic him, though, you're going to want to change and make sure you've got offense mods on him. The reason I have him with speed mods at this point, folks, basically he's just kind of a one-trick pony with my Qui-Gon team. He's just there to get speed, to give people speed, and to die. He's not really there for much of anything else. But you do want to mod him up with loads and loads and loads of offense. When you get him stacked up with offense, and speed is also very good for him, folks. If you're running him under a Qui-Gon team in particular, you're obviously going to see a lot of benefit from him having additional speed. So similar to how Jedi Knight Luke liked protection as well as offense. Gas preferred protection as well as offense. Cam really wants speed as well as offense. I mean, it's pretty obvious who doesn't want speed in offense, but those are his top two. Okay, moving into our next set. This is 6 through 10. And again, this is not in a particular order. All right, looking at numbers 6 through 10 here, we have the Beskar armor version of the Mandalorian, or Bam, as he's affectionately called. Bam really wants offense. And the reason for that is because of his swift takedown that he's got going on here, and the whistling birds. I was totally blanking on the whistling word there. His whistling birds do a ton of damage based upon his offense. He really doesn't need crit. He doesn't, because it does true damage. You don't really want to mod him for crit damage at all. It's all about the offense. Now, in terms of the secondary stat that you might be looking for, you could argue speed depending on how you're going to set up the team. I would argue tenacity is more important in his case. Speed is not as important. You do want a certain turn order for Bam, but ultimately, in my opinion, tenacity is more important. You don't want to get ability blocked. You don't want to get stunned. Those kinds of things really ruin your day if that happens for Bam. You want him to be able to take that turn. You want him to be able to just absolutely annihilate people with all the offense you've put on him, folks. So make sure that he doesn't get stunned and or ability blocked during your battle. Okay. Moving on, Sith Marauder. Sith Marauder is a fun little case here. He is a character that does not really require a ton of speed. Certainly isn't a bad idea to give him some speed, but he doesn't require a massive amount. I actually used to have him modded a lot better, and then I just unlocked Star Killer, so I swapped some mods a little bit. He's not quite as good as he used to be. But you do want him to have loads and loads of offense. You can see I've got a decent amount on him. I used to have him over the 10,000 mark. But you also, fun fact, want to mod him for health. So what happens with Marauder is that he just continually gains stats over and over again during battle, and becomes absurdly thick if you have him modded for health. And then he also is gaining offense throughout this entire time that this is happening. So the more health you have on him, the more offense you have on him, the better. You can see I have a health primary here, but again, I have an offense secondary. Offense primary, this is obviously one of the mods that I swapped out, unfortunately, so we're going to be working on that a little bit. Offense primary here. Don't have a health secondary, unfortunately. This is the best that I got at the moment. But you can see the offense set. Health primary. Unfortunately, some bad rolls on this one. We're working towards that, etc., etc. You can kind of see the process here. Again, unfortunately, we don't have health on that one, folks. Again, Marauder does not have my best mod setup, but you definitely want offense on him. You definitely would like health as well in addition to that. Darth Talon, next up on our list here. Darth Talon really benefits mostly from health. She is kind of an unusual situation where she could probably kind of get a lot of different things. Speed on her isn't necessarily a bad thing. Potency isn't a bad thing. Offense isn't a bad thing. There's just a lot of ways that you could take Talon. But generally speaking, she really is going to benefit the most from offense, in particular in her kit. So you really want to get her going with offense. I did just recently get her to Relic 5. She was one of the last ones for my Star Killer requirements here. So you can see she doesn't have amazing mods at the moment. They are all with heavy focus on offense, though, in the secondary, so that as I progress these mods, we're going to see a good bit of increase and improvement as they are leveled up and or in the primaries. So, moving on after Talon here, we have one of the probably more controversial picks on this list, and that is Qui-Gon Jinn. So, I mentioned earlier, Cam works really well under a Qui-Gon team with offense. I prefer modding Qui-Gon for offense. So, a lot of people will mod him to be fast, because if you can get him to go faster than the other opposing team, a lot of times it's a more effective team. If you're trying to go for that strategy, then yes, go for speed. Speed all the way, folks. But if you're going for more of a general approach where you want them to take as long as possible to kill Qui-Gon, and then also, when they do kill Qui-Gon, you're hoping for that Jedi Knight Anakin nuke, this is the way you want to mod him. Make him as thick as possible, and give him as much offense as possible. His speed does not matter in this instance. He is just there to die and sacrifice himself, kind of like Fives for the 5.0 first. So I have him modded mostly for health, as well as for offense. Not a whole lot of speed on him. Not as important with the way that I have him modded. Again, the way that you have him set up within your team and how you run your team is probably going to affect what you do. If you run this Qui-Gon team on offense, you're probably going to be less likely to mod him for offense and mod him more for speed in that scenario. I use him on defense, so I prefer the offensive mod setup. Again, depending on what you do with your roster. All right, next up we have Maul. Maul is a really unique character in that he wants lots and lots of health because his offense will increase based upon his health. So this is a bit of a controversial one because some people think it's best to just to load him up with as much health as possible and then allow that scaling to happen and really boost your offense up to a high level. Other people, like myself, tend to prefer him with more offense to start with and then give him as much health as possible so you see that improvement over time. I run Maul with Mandalorian team, so that's why I tend to lean more towards the offense setup. If I ran him under a Lord Vader team, there's probably a better likelihood that I would go with health, especially because Lord Vader converts, and actually what I would more than likely do is give him protection in that scenario, since that all gets converted over into health. But if you are running him as a Mandalorian version of this character, more than likely you're going to want offense as much as possible. Again, depends on the mods you have, folks. If you've got just amazing health mods with amazing offense secondaries, you might be better off doing that than running offense mods. For me, my offense mods with some health were the better way to go. Okay. Now, last but not least, we have our bonus content, our bonus 3 characters. These characters are amazing because all they need is offense. The common theme with our top 10 was they always needed something in addition to offense, whether it be protection, whether it be speed, whether it be tenacity. Sometimes we needed just them to be thick and have loads of health. These 3 characters here, folks, just want offense. So Dark Trooper, in particular, his turn meter is so heavily provided by the Imperial Trooper team and through killing people. As long as you can get kills, as long as you can hit hard enough, you don't need speed. You just need Piet to be fast enough to get your team rolling, and then Dark Trooper will take care of the rest. So you just want all of the offense, folks. This is probably my best set in terms of pure offense because I have just loaded him to the gills with as much offense as possible. You can see all of the right side is all primaries. The left side has some really, really high offense secondaries, whether it be flat or percentage. Just give him all your offense, all of your offense. In terms of a secondary aspect, you know, tenacity is important, probably, I would say, with Dark Trooper more than anything else. But again, just offense. Just give him all the offense, everybody. Next up, we have Snow Trooper. Snow Trooper is a lot like Dark Trooper in that he is going to hit super hard. He is not really going to need speed because he's going to get loads of turn meter if you're able to kill one of the enemies. Now, that is primarily through his unique. If you have him run under, for instance, a Veer's team, if you're more early game with the Imperial Troopers, you don't have Dark Trooper yet, Snow Trooper is kind of like the poor man's version of this. Plug him in, load him up with lots of offense, and you're going to really see a big benefit. Now, you can see with him, because I don't really run him in an ideal team anymore, I don't run him with Veers anymore, I've given him the crit chance and crit damage mods. He does not have any more of my elite offensive mods, but I do make sure that all of his secondaries are very good offensive mods as well. If I took him up into the relics, this would probably change. I would probably change it over to an offense, similar to my cam. It's just that the character is just not high enough to warrant those elite level mods. Now, Droideka, on the other hand, really does not benefit a whole lot at all from crit chance. Kind of like Dark Trooper. So, Snow Trooper will crit quite a bit. But Dark Trooper and Droideka do not crit very much, if at all. Droideka does most of the damage through true damage. So you really, truly want... Do you see what I did there? You truly want loads and loads of offense, similar to BAM, where there's just a lot of true damage and no actual crits are possible. Fun fact with Droideka, same thing. You do not really need speed. Droideka gets loads of speed because of its unique. Unless, I will point out, there is one exception to this rule. If you are trying to run the Droideka version of a Mandalorian team, then you do want as much speed as possible on Droideka. Whole different scenario though, totally using Droideka in a different way for that kind of situation, folks. If you are using him in that way, offense doesn't matter. You just need him to go first. But if you're using him in a more normal comp with General Grievous, for instance, or other droids, then you're just going to want to load him up with as much offense, and that's all that matters. That'll wrap us up here for today. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit of something and you enjoyed today's video. If you did enjoy today's video, I'd appreciate it if you guys gave a like down below. Also, if you'd like to catch more content that I'm putting out for Star Wars Galaxy of Hero or other games in general, right now we're heavily into the Star Wars stuff. We'll be getting into some other games like Valheim here in the not too distant future. Anyway, if you do like this stuff, make sure you guys subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss anything in the future. Last but not least, if you would like to join the live conversation, feel free to join us over on Discord or on Twitch for our live GAC matches. You can find all that information down below in the video description. All right, everybody. Catch you next time.